I don't think I want to take this sweater off forever. Merry Sithmas, everyone. So let's wrap up December, therefore wrapping up 2020. Thank God I'm ready to be out of this year. I think I've read 16 books so far this month, but I'm in the middle of a couple. So by the end of the year, my original reading goal for 2020 was 52 books. I wanted to read a book a week this year. By like May, I had hit that. So then I set my new goal to be 104. I wanted to read 2 books a week. I hit that in like August or something. I wanted to triple it, which would be 156, and I met that a few, like last week maybe. Let's just wrap up everything that I read in December. It was a pretty great reading month, so I'm excited to talk about what I've read. Just start with the few that I have in front of me, which includes one of my current reads. So I read Shadow and Bone and Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, and I'm currently in the middle of Ruin and Rising. Actually, I shouldn't say in the middle. I'm like 3 chapters in of Ruin and Rising. So the Shadow and Bone trilogy, I am loving this series. I am so excited to see how this wraps up. This series is so good. I remember seeing quite a few people talking about it, and they were like, Shadow and Bone is boring, like Six of Crows is where it's at. And so then I was kind of like, do I want to read this? But I read the synopsis and I'm like, this sounds really interesting. And I'm so glad that I didn't take other reviews and not end up reading them because I'm loving it. So Shadow and Bone, I gave 5 out of 5. Fantasy books tend sometimes to drag for me in the beginning. Obviously, there's a lot of world building that needs to happen. There's a lot of setup that needs to happen. But Shadow and Bone, I'm pretty sure in like the second chapter, there's like a big fight sequence time, and I was like, this is the kind of fantasy that I want to be like right in the thick of it from the beginning, and it's definitely what I really like. Alina's character, I liked her from the start. Like, she was a good heroine to be following in the Darkling. I love a good villain, everyone, and I'm loving the Darkling. I think his character is really intriguing. This one, I think I gave this one 5 out of 5 as well. I didn't like it as much as the first one, but I still thought that it was great. I wanted more of the Darkling's character in this with Alina. I think they're 2 characters together. Like, the Darkling said that no one will ever understand like the power that the 2 of them have and how it's gonna like fracture her relationships with other people. And I don't think he's wrong. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how their characters wrap up in the 3rd book. I will say I liked Nikolai in this too. I thought he's another great character. I don't love Mal. I don't really get why people like him, but I do think that one of the strong suits of this series is like just the world building. I love the idea of their magic, and it's very well explained and it's easy to follow along with. And I can't wait for the Netflix show. I saw the trailer and I am really excited for that. So that's another fun thing to look forward to in 2021. So yeah, so far 2 5-star reads, and depending on how this wraps up, I mean, I probably foresee it being another 5-star read for me. I read like a pretty decent like balance of fantasy and romance. So let's jump into a romance. Bad Habit by Charlie Rose. So this was my 2nd book by Charlie Rose. I had read Misbehaved back over the summer, and I really liked that. I mean, obviously I was a student teacher, and if you know me, you know that I love student teacher. So I did really like that one. I still think I would pick that one over this one. However, I did like Bad Habit. But here's the thing. When I was thinking back, this was my 1st book that I read this month. When I was thinking back for this video of like gathering my thoughts, I couldn't remember a whole lot about Bad Habit. I literally couldn't even remember the characters' names. And part of that does have to do with that I obviously read a lot of books, but going over other books this month, I remembered like everything about them except for this one. So take that as you will. I'm not saying that it was a bad book. I did really enjoy it. I got through it very quickly. Like, I was definitely invested from the beginning. It follows Briar and Asher, which, yes, I did have to look that up, but Briar and Asher, it is a brother's best friend trope, which again is one of my favorites, which is why I was like, why did this not necessarily like click as much for me? Basically, Asher is obviously Briar's brother's best friend, and one night when they're still in high school, Briar and Asher have like a moment together, and then the next day Asher's gone. What's happened to him? Oh no, where did he go? 3 years later he returns, and he's angry at Briar for what's happened, and it's like kind of enemies to lovers-ish, but they're like all with the same friend groups. I don't know. Hi, my dog's here. It was good. I liked it, but like I said, it was kind of forgettable. You know what? Let's get this one out of the way. I read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is my friend's copy, so I was really trying to push through it to get it back to her. Controversial opinion coming up here. This did not work for me. I know so many people love this series and love this book and love Juden Carden, and that is great. I'm so glad that so many people love it. This was just not for me. It was so slow. Didn't really love the world. I didn't necessarily like Jude or Carden. And granted, this is the first book. I'm sure in books 2 and 3, you get a lot more into their characters. You get a lot more substance out of both of them. But Jude and Carden were like really hyped up for me. And I was like, their romance for me came out of nowhere. Like I love enemies to lovers, but there was really never even like any tension. I felt really built up between the two of them until the very end. Then all of a sudden, like Carden's her prisoner and they're kissing. Like it didn't work for me. I will say, like the last 70 pages I enjoyed, but the rest of this book, I really didn't. I just more read it just to finish it because I really hate DNFing books. But honestly, I don't think I'll finish the rest of the series. Maybe at some point, if I'm like really bored, I'll go back and read the other 2 books. But from this alone, I'm like not really invested. Okay, I was so excited about this release. So then I read Fire Night by Penelope Douglas, which is a novella for the Devil's Night series. So this takes place after Nightfall. I so enjoyed it. I'm not the biggest fan of novellas normally because I feel like you can't really get a lot of character development in them. You can't really get a whole lot of plot done without it seeming rushed or just like really glossed over. But for this series, I think it made sense to have one because these characters are already established. The relationships are already established. The world is already there. So you don't really have to do any of that. You can just kind of jump in and play around, which I think Penelope Douglas did a great job of. You got 4 chapters, each following one of the horsemen. Kai's chapter was my favorite. I also did really like Damon's. They were just my 2 favorite horsemen. I will say this just left me wanting so much more in that world. And I know she said that she's not planning on writing anything in the Devil's Night world right now, which I'm fine with, honestly, because I'm excited for her new content that's going to be coming out in 2021. But it does, like, seeing the kids in this world now and like the next generation, like I want their stories, but also I'm fine if this is where it's left forever because I would rather leave it on like a really high note than her like push to make content just because people want it and then have it be disappointing. Yeah, I'm sad that the Devil's Night world is most likely complete and over. Just to my other Penelope Douglas read, I finally got a copy of The Next Flame. So the Falling Away series I've been working to collect, and this book sells for an insane amount of money online on like eBay and Mercari. So expensive, and people in Penelope Douglas's reader group on Facebook are constantly posting about being like, my Barnes & Noble had this for $6. The Barnes & Nobles are like few and far in between that have it. So I found one in my state that was like 3 hours of driving. Then one of my friends and I road tripped to get this book for me. So we had a fun time. That vlog is on my channel. I'll link it down below. But yes, I did drive over 3 hours just to buy this book, and I'm so happy that I did because it has a flame in here, which I had already read earlier this year because my library had an ebook copy of it, so I was able to read a flame, but I had never read Next to Never, which is the second novella in here. I did like Next to Never. I just liked being back in the world. I liked being back with some of the characters. It wasn't my favorite just because I didn't necessarily care about Maddox's dad and Jared's mom. Like, I didn't really care how their love story came about. I liked that it was included, like it made sense to like have their story told, because we definitely got it teased a lot in the Falling Away series, but I guess like I just probably wanted more of Quinn and like her. I was intrigued by her and her love story with Lucas, but like we never really got any of that. I'm more really excited to have this for A Flame because A Flame is actually one of my favorites in the whole series, even though it is a novella. I just really love getting back in with Jared and Tate and having them like breaking up and then them rekindling their romance again. I liked that a lot more. Let's jump into this other series because this was the series that I really wanted to wrap up before the end of 2020. So I'm talking about the Stay With Me series by Nicole Fiorna. So this month I read Even When I'm Gone and Now Open Your Eyes, which are books 2 and 3 in that trilogy. Stay With Me is still by far my favorite. I just love that book. I love Mia and Nolly's story in that book, and I think it set up the rest of the series very well. However, book 2 did get a little slow for me. I definitely did take a bit of a break reading that one for a bit just because it was just a little much in the beginning with where Ollie's character goes and how they kind of have to go their separate ways for a bit. I didn't love them being apart. I loved me and Ollie together, so like having them apart, while I get they needed time, it wasn't necessarily my favorite. However, by the end of the book, I was really loving it again. And the ending of this book had me swooping into book 3. Oh my God, so quick. And book 3, again, they had me in the beginning, I'm not gonna lie. The beginning was not my favorite. I can't really talk about it because it would spoil all of book 2 basically. But the beginning of book 3, again, not my favorite. But I'd say by like 40% of the way through to the end, I was like back in it. I was loving it, and I flew through that last like 60%. I really liked how the series wrapped up. I was really shocked at the end. I thought that Nicole Fiona did something, and I was like, she did not just do this, but also I would have respected it because I'm a big proponent of killing your darlings. But I won't really say any more because once again, I don't want to spoil anything, and I can't wait to read anything more by her. I know Ethan has a book coming in 2021. I'm skeptical, but I guess I'm excited. I'll definitely be reading it. Let me do my book club book. So this is the oddball out, but only because I read it for a book club. I don't read a lot of like historical fiction really, or like historical, it's like based on a true story, but it's obviously a little fictionalized. But we read it for my book club in December, and this was a surprise for me, and I loved it. And that is In the Time of Butterflies by Julia Alvarez. And I was genuinely looking forward every single week to reading our new sections. And it's just a really beautiful story. It is a true story following these 4 sisters, basically in the dictatorship of the Dominican Republic in the 1960s. It's like the 1960s, late 1950s, these 4 sisters. And it was so fun getting to read the different sisters' perspectives every chapter. So it's split up into 3 sections, and each chapter has a different sister's perspective going through it. And that was really fun because while they're all sisters, they were all so different, and their journeys to fighting against this dictatorship were very different. So it was great to see how each of them came to be a part of the movement. This was really great because I had never heard of the Mirabelle sisters. So it was definitely like a history lesson for me, but in a way that was like good for me to digest in terms of like reading, because it was fictionalized and it felt like a story rather than just like a historical text, which I think is the point of historical fiction, to like broaden the audience for these stories. So I loved it. I thought it was a great pick. It made for really great discussions. And honestly, it was something so different than what I've read pretty much this whole year. The story was like heartbreaking, but also just like so empowering too, especially in like current climates and everything. It was just really great, and I'm really happy that I read it. Then I read Fracture Me and Ignite Me by Tahera Mafi. So Fracture Me is a novella that comes in between Unravel Me and Ignite Me, which are books 2 and 3 in the Shatter Me series. Fracture Me is told from Adam's perspective. I was not expecting a lot out of this because, again, it's a novella. I don't really vibe with those as much. However, the other novella, I can't remember what it's called, but that was Aaron's novella that took place in between Shatter Me and Unravel Me, was huge for his character and like so needed, I thought. I don't like vibe with Adam, and now that I've read Ignite Me, it's hard to like not have that perspective. But even before I had read Ignite Me, like Adam was just not really my vibe. He kind of gave me like Gale energy from the Hunger Games. I don't know, he wasn't really it for me. And I did like this novella because I liked getting to see his perspective and his thought process. I can't knock his I get where he's coming from, which is why I don't want to make excuses for his actions later on in the series, but I get it, and I get why he does things the way that he does and why he reacts the way that he does, which is what I'm looking for in a character. Like, I just want to understand them. Even if I don't agree with them, I just want to seek to understand. And this definitely did that. And I loved Ignite Me. This series was such a surprise for me. I genuinely have loved each and every book in this series. Tahera Mafi's writing style, I'm obsessed with it. I loved Juliet's character development from Unravel to Ignite Me. I think she really came into her power in this one, and I liked her kind of taking charge of her life because she came to this realization that she really has just let everyone else kind of make decisions for her whole life and tell her what she's gonna do. And in this one, she's finally like, I'm gonna do something about it. And I loved that moment for her. I also loved Warner. Of course, I mean, guys, I love the villain, but he's not the villain, guys. He's not the villain. But I love that he's just so unapologetically himself, and that when like Kenji and Adam and Castle, they're like asking him like, are you gonna trap us? Are you going to kill us? Are you going to help us? He's like, no, like, I don't know. I might kill you. I am a little uncertain about continuing the rest of the series because I know Ignite Me was supposed to be the end. And then she came out with the next 3 books. And I've heard like really mixed things about the last 3. And I loved like this arc so far. So I almost am considering it just like leaving it as it is. I feel satisfied with where the story left off with like Warner's character and Juliet's character. So I don't know. I feel like a really fun one. So while I was reading a lot of these different fantasy books, I just wanted something light and quick and fun to get through. So I picked up Wrong by Jana Aston. This was such a genuine surprise for me. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. I think I ended up giving it 4 out of 5, but like pure enjoyment value would be 5 out of 5, honestly, for it. So this follows Sophie, who is a senior in college and she's a barista, and she has this crush on this guy who constantly comes into her coffee shop. And then she goes to the doctor a couple days later and she realizes that her doctor is the guy that she's always flirting with at the coffee shop. It was just fun. It's definitely like rom-com-y. It's not very serious like whatsoever. It is just like a very lighthearted tone. Sophie is kind of ridiculous and makes a fool out of herself quite a bit. And Luke is like pretty serious, but also fun. But if you're looking just for something like basically a rom-com in a book, I would definitely pick this up. Okay. I read A Lesson in Thorns by Sierra Simone. I was really excited for this book and I was a little disappointed. I don't know, I still kind of have mixed feelings on this one. Thorn Chapel is the place that they go to, and it's in Europe. I want to say it's in like England. I honestly don't even know. I couldn't tell you. I'm sorry, I'm butchering this book. But basically it follows Poe, who goes back to this manor. And she ends up being reconnected with her 5 childhood friends. And I should say this, the diversity in this book is great in terms of like ethnicity, sexuality, religion. Pretty much like every person is very different from the next. It's not just like one token person. Like everyone is very different and diverse. And there's even like body type representation. And I was really looking forward to it because it was supposed to be more of like a menage relationship with all of them. And it wasn't really as much that, if I'm gonna be honest. It wasn't really until like 75% of the way through that anything kind of happened. Which I love a slow burn, but this wasn't really even like that much of a slow burn. Okay, so Poe likes Auden, but Auden is engaged to Delphine, and Poe also likes Saint Sebastian, which I really liked Saint Sebastian as well. And then there's Beckett and Rebecca. I just wanted more out of the book. It felt really slow paced. I do think it did a great job of building like the creepiness of this manor and like all of the different like hidden mysteries and clues that everyone's searching for, because Poe originally goes to search for her missing mother. I did like Poe. I think Saint Sebastian's character is really intriguing, but I don't know. As of right now, I'm not going to continue the series, but I don't know. Overall, I think this book was just like kind of a letdown for me in terms of my expectations that I had for it. Next, I wanted to just read like one holiday novella. I just felt like I needed to read one, and I feel like one was enough for me. I did decide to pick up The Boss Who Stole Christmas by Jana Aston because I loved Wrong so much. And I did like this, but again, it's just a novella. It's not necessarily gonna be my favorite. This follows Holly and Nick. I know. and they work at a toy company, and Nick's like a grumpy boss, and Holly just like loves Christmas all year round, and they live in a place called Reindeer Falls, and then they go on a trip, is it to Germany, I think, maybe, to like visit with some potential business partners, but they go to like Christmas markets, and it's just very Christmassy. It's actually kind of like a Hallmark movie in a novella. I liked it for what it was. Then I picked up first semester because it's a student teacher. When do I not want to pick that up? I will say this was just fun. Again, not necessarily anything groundbreaking. It was very just like easygoing, fun, quick, steamy read. And it's everything that I kind of wanted, if I'm going to be honest. I didn't really want anything too serious, and this didn't really have that. It followed Skylar and Aiden, and Skylar is a freshman in college in DC, and she joins this dating app as a rebound, and she meets this guy on there. His name's Aiden. They meet up. They have a good night. Then she walks into class on Monday, and guess who her new criminal justice professor is? Aiden. So, it went how you think it would go. We're finally at my last book that I read this month, and that was War Storm by Victoria Aveyard. I finally finished this book. I read the rest of the series back in July. You heard that right, July. It's December. This series, loved Red Queen, really liked Glass Sword, liked King's Cage, and I got 5 chapters into War Storm, and I was like, I'm putting this down. And I didn't pick it back up until this month because I couldn't get into it. And the only reason that I even like really pushed myself to finish it was because it was closing out 2020, and I didn't want to not finish the series. I will say once about like halfway through, which is bad because it's like over 600 pages. So like around like the 300 mark, I was actually really into it. My problem with this book is there are so many perspectives going on, which I liked, but it just became too much. There were too many characters to follow that I felt then like a lot of the development got pushed aside for characters to get like surface level development of others. I like Iris, but I didn't necessarily care about her character. I liked Evangeline, but again, like we hadn't followed her from the very beginning. I liked Cameron, but I didn't really care about Cameron, so I didn't really care about her involvement. I don't know. I'm so torn on this book even now still. I felt like we spent so much time with Mare and Maven and Cal in the early books that then in this one, I didn't necessarily love how any of their stories ended, which is why I'm kind of disappointed by it. But I also get why it ended the way that it did. So I can't really be mad at it. I get what Victoria Aveyard was going for with these characters. But for me, it just like it wasn't what I wanted to see, which is fine because it's not my story. But I think we lost so much of Mare's character development to get other characters in this that I didn't necessarily care about. I think we lost so much of Cal and Maven in this book to again get other characters that I didn't care about. It almost felt like this should have had another book, like a 5th book, because there was so much that needed to happen in this that it just felt rushed at the end. It felt rushed but slow at the same time. It felt like there was nothing going on, and then all of a sudden we were like in the final battle. I didn't think any of the fight sequences were like outstanding like in some of the other books. I don't know, this was just overall a bit of a letdown for me, if I'm going to be honest, and I kind of get now why people don't love the series as a whole, because this was disappointing. I can only say that one of the characters' endings was like the most anticlimactic ending I think I've like ever read. I don't know, I did tab a few parts, but I will tell you every single part that is tabbed is where we got some of Maven and Mare's character. I think like their dynamic, and like even Maven and Cal, they never really had like a moment. They had like this meeting at one point, but even then there were so many other people involved. I kind of wanted just a scene of like Maven, Mare, and Cal getting to kind of have a moment together, and we didn't get that. And I hate how Maven's character ended. I don't necessarily love how Mare and Cal's characters ended. I wanted more for the two of them. The biggest loss for me is Maven's character in this series. There's even a great line where I think I have it tabbed, where Farley says like it's such a shame that you're a bad person. Okay, so Farley says here, it's a pity you have no soul, Maven Clore. You could have been someone worth saving. Like, Maven was a great character, and I just don't think that the way that his storyline, like, ended at the end of this book was satisfying for me. So I don't know. I mean, overall, I liked the series, and I could see myself going back and rereading it again, but the ending has, like, kind of disappointed it for me. Everything that I've read so far this month, the few things that I'm going to be wrapping up that will not be in this video yet are going to be Ruin and Rising. I already kind of talked about this. I'm really excited for that. I am also in the middle of Backstage Pass by Olivia Cunning. I think it's kind of odd that it's a romance told from a third person. You don't read a lot of third person romances. That is my wrap up for this year. Thank you guys for watching. Please go ahead and subscribe. I also have a podcast called Popcorn Chats. We just celebrated our 1 year of that. So you can find that anywhere like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, like anywhere that you get podcasts, you can listen to us. We also have a YouTube channel. I will link that down below as well, where you can catch our episodes on there. My co-host also has a YouTube channel, so I'll link that below as well. Thank you guys again for tuning in. This has been like a fun way to kind of keep track of everything that I've been reading and document it for me over the past few months. And I hope everyone has a great end of their year. I will see you in 2021.